The low hum of the television turning on fills the room, a comforting sound that marks the beginning of another evening. Soft light flickers from the screen, casting shadows that dance across the walls. The smell of a home-cooked dinner lingers in the air, a contrast to the cold evening breeze that occasionally sweeps through the open window. You can almost feel the warmth of the room, the low murmur of voices, and the quiet rustling of a well-worn couch cushion as someone shifts into a more comfortable position. It's a simple scene, almost timeless, yet in that moment, there's a deep sense of belonging. The family gathers slowly, each person moving to find their place, eyes naturally drawn toward the flickering screen. The evening has begun, and the television, more than just an object, becomes a part of the rhythm of the home. In these quiet moments, you realize it's not the shows we remember most, but the comfort of shared space, of family, and of a routine that shaped the days. Maybe it was never just the programs themselves, but how we all gathered together, as if time slowed down when the TV came on. When was it that television became the heart of our evenings? The evening was never rushed. It was its own slow rhythm, like the soft click of a clock winding down the day. Dinner time was a quiet affair, the kind where the clinking of utensils and the soft murmur of conversation filled the air. It wasn't so much about what was being said, but the sense of togetherness, the comfort of sharing a meal after a long day, the quiet moments between bites, the warmth of food served just the way you liked it. The air would be thick with the smell of freshly baked bread, perhaps a roast in the oven, or the comforting scent of soup bubbling on the stove. That was how it began, a simple routine that tied the family together. The conversations at the table often meandered through the events of the day, but as the minutes passed, there was an almost imperceptible shift. Dinner slowed down, and without words, everyone knew it was time. One by one, the chairs would scrape against the floor as family members began to stand, clearing their plates, readying themselves for the second part of the evening. Slowly, almost like a ritual, attention began to turn toward the living room. The family room was the heart of the house, where the TV sat in the corner, glowing faintly in the background, even before it was turned on. It was as though the room itself exhaled a collective sigh, preparing for the shared calm that would follow. The television, once just an appliance, had become a central part of this unspoken routine. It wasn't so much about what was on or even who was watching, but the shared presence of it. The TV was there to fill the silence, but more importantly, it was a space where time seemed to slow, where the busyness of the day could be set aside. It was in the way the family would gather, whether sprawling out on the couch or settling in a circle of chairs, and the unspoken comfort of simply being near each other. The evening was now marked by this shared experience. There was a predictability in it, a sense of rhythm that was comforting because it was always the same. The warmth of the living room, now illuminated by the soft glow of the TV, felt like a second home. The kids, who had been full of energy just moments before, would often settle in with their blankets, their tired bodies curling up into the soft cushions of the couch. Parents would sit back, sometimes with a cup of coffee or a warm drink, their faces soft with the fatigue of the day. There was something magical about the way this space seemed to hold everything together, and yet it was never hurried. The ritual of moving from the dinner table to the couch, of letting the evening unfold naturally, brought a quiet sense of peace that lingered long after the last commercial break. Looking back, it's clear that these little routines weren't just a way to pass time. They were a way of creating a shared space, of weaving time together. It wasn't just dinner or just TV. It was the slow, familiar dance of family life. And in that, there was a quiet kind of magic. The soft murmur of voices would quiet, and a collective anticipation would settle over the room. The first few notes of the theme song would drift into the air, the familiar music stirring a feeling of comfort, like a welcome old friend. It wasn't just the show itself that drew everyone in. It was the shared experience of waiting for it, the gentle build-up that marked the transition from dinner to evening entertainment. There was a collective breath held for a moment, and then the opening credits. The excitement wasn't about what was about to unfold on the screen, but about being there together, about knowing that this was part of the daily ritual, the heartbeat of family life. The show itself was often secondary to the routine it brought with it. It could have been a drama, a comedy, or even a news broadcast. But each show had its own special place in the evening. Some families had favorites, those shows that, once they started, became the thread that held the evening together. For others, it was the joy of the unknown, the excitement of sitting down in front of the screen with no idea what would unfold. But no matter the show, the feeling was the same. The room would still, as if the outside world no longer mattered. The glow of the television seemed to soften everything, bringing a sense of peace, almost like a gentle lullaby. The busy world outside was now a distant memory, replaced by the comforting presence of the characters on the screen. It was in these moments, when the opening credits rolled, that something magical happened. The act of watching a show together wasn't just about entertainment. It became an unspoken bond. You were there, in the same room, watching the same thing, sharing in the same laughter, tears, or tension. In a way, the shows mirrored life itself, unfolding in real time, but always offering a sense of escape, of something familiar. There was comfort in the predictability of it all. You knew when it started, when it would end, and the small rituals that followed. The TV gave structure to the evening, a framework around which everything else could revolve. As the show progressed, family members would occasionally comment on what was happening, but often they'd simply be absorbed in the unfolding plot. The TV wasn't a background noise. It was the centerpiece of the evening, the one thing everyone in the room was connected to, no matter their age or interests. And yet, even when the show reached its peak moments, there was a quiet stillness, a shared understanding that these moments were meant to be savored, not rushed. The world could wait. It was in these moments that life felt simple, that time seemed to stretch, and that the connection between family members deepened, if only for the hour or so the show lasted. When the episode ended, the sense of finality would settle in, an acknowledgement that the evening was now drawing to a close, the routine preparing to reset itself again the next day. The screen would fade to black, but the sense of togetherness lingered in the air. It wasn't just the show that left its mark. It was the feeling of having been there, together, in a moment of quiet harmony. And as the credits rolled, there was always a gentle comfort in knowing that the next episode was just a week away, ready to bring the family back together once more. There was something unique about the way the television became more than just a source of entertainment. It became a quiet companion. Often, it wasn't the center of attention, but it was always there, subtly shaping the atmosphere of the home. Even when the family wasn't actively watching it, the hum of the TV in the background created a sort of ambient presence. It was a soft, comforting noise that filled in the spaces between conversations, a gentle reminder that the house was not empty, that there was something connecting everyone together. The flickering light from the screen, even in moments of silence, seemed to make the room feel fuller, more alive. Sometimes, the TV was left on for company, particularly in the evenings when the house felt quieter and the weight of the day lingered in the air. No one would be paying attention to the screen in those moments. Perhaps a family member was folding laundry, another was reading, and someone else was doing the dishes. But the TV still served its purpose. It wasn't about what was on. It was about the presence it offered, the way it brought life into the room without demanding attention. In this way, the television became a sort of constant background, like a familiar friend who didn't require conversation to make you feel comfortable. It was always there, a subtle companion that provided a quiet kind of comfort just by being on. And when someone did turn their attention to the screen, there was no need to explain. The TV had already created its own space in the room. It had become part of the family's rhythm, whether it was offering background noise, providing an escape into a story, or even fostering discussions during commercials. The moments that followed were never rushed. If someone had a question or a thought about what was happening, it would be shared with the room, and others would chime in. It was often in these small, unscripted conversations that families would connect most deeply. The TV wasn't merely a distraction. It became a vehicle for bonding, a way of sparking gentle exchanges about what was being watched or what was going on in the world. The atmosphere that the TV created also offered a certain kind of peace. There was something about the way the television's soft glow seemed to calm the room, casting everything in a quiet, golden light. It wasn't loud or brash. It was as though the TV respected the unspoken silence of the family, and in return, the family respected it. Sometimes the TV was nothing more than a quiet backdrop to the shared stillness of the room, and yet, in those moments, it seemed to hold everything together. It made the house feel more like a home, where every small action and every soft word was gently accompanied by the presence of this shared companion. In this sense, the TV also shaped how the family spent their time. It wasn't just a tool for watching shows, it was a marker of the evening, a presence that defined the rhythm of daily life. Whether it was there to comfort, entertain, or simply fill the quiet, it was a constant. It's strange how, when something is always present, you begin to rely on it without even noticing. And yet, it wasn't the television itself that made the evening so memorable. It was how it created a space for togetherness, offering a backdrop for moments of connection, however small or fleeting. It became a part of the family in a way that was subtle, but unmistakably important. The family might have been the core, but the TV was the constant, quietly holding everything together. There was something uniquely comforting about the structure of television programming, especially in the way it was broken up by commercial breaks. These pauses, though seemingly ordinary, became a small ritual in their own right, a moment where the flow of the evening shifted ever so slightly. As soon as the screen cut to a commercial, the room would subtly come alive. Family members who had been settled in and absorbed in the program would suddenly begin to stir, as if the break was an invitation to shift gears. A brief collective pause would fill the air, followed by the soft shuffle of feet on the carpet as someone stood to stretch or head to the kitchen. The hum of the TV, now accompanied by the jingles of advertisements, was no longer the focus. It became the background noise to the small movements and casual exchanges that filled the room. In those moments, the family rhythm was clear. Someone would make their way to the fridge to grab a snack or pour a drink, and another might take the opportunity to ask about the events of the day. It was a subtle shift, a brief time of recharging before returning to the screen. The commercial break was a space for small conversations to unfold, conversations that might have been interrupted by the ongoing show. The break gave everyone the chance to breathe, to stretch, and to share a moment of connection without the pressure of keeping their eyes glued to the screen. It was during these breaks that the TV seemed to fade into the background, becoming a distant hum as the real-life interactions began to take center stage. Even the sound of the commercials, so familiar and often repetitive, became part of the ritual. Their jingles and catchphrases were as much a part of the evening as the program itself. Perhaps the ads became a kind of collective experience, a shared knowledge of slogans, characters, and products that were advertised week after week. It wasn't just the commercials that held significance, it was the time between them, the way the family used these brief pauses to reconnect. The television had provided the anchor for the evening, but the commercials offered a moment to shift away from it, even if only for a few minutes. It was also a time to check in with each other. What had been missed? What was the conversation buzzing around the show? These small moments allowed family members to engage with each other, perhaps catching up on the plot for those who were momentarily distracted or commenting on something funny that had happened in the episode. The shared experience of television, once the show resumed, was deeper because it was enriched by the small, real-world connections that occurred during the commercial breaks. There was something almost sacred about the way these pauses were observed. No one was in a rush to get back to the show immediately. The commercials weren't an interruption. They were simply a part of the ritual, a moment woven into the evening fabric. It was in these small gaps that the true nature of family time revealed itself, where people could leave the glow of the screen for just a moment and engage with each other. And when the program returned, it was as though the room exhaled collectively, ready to slip back into the shared experience of the story unfolding. The rhythm of the show had resumed, but the ritual of the commercial break had already worked its quiet magic, creating space for both connection and respite. There are few things more memorable than the first time a family upgraded to a color television. It was more than just a new appliance. It was an event, a milestone that brought a certain sense of wonder and anticipation. The old black and white sets had served their purpose, but the shift to color TV marked a new era, one that seemed filled with possibility. Families gathered around the new set, eager to witness the transformation. The world they had previously seen in shades of gray suddenly came alive in vibrant colors, the characters on screen appearing more real, more tangible. The reds, greens, and blues were like nothing they had ever experienced before. The moment the screen flickered to life, with its bold, bright hues, a sense of magic filled the room. It was a new world unfolding before their eyes. It was almost impossible to fully capture the impact of color television at the time. To watch an evening program, whether it was a sitcom or a drama, was to see it through a lens of newfound clarity. A familiar world now felt different, more vibrant, more immediate. The color didn't just affect the shows, it altered the very way families experienced them. For the first time, the sky on screen was truly blue, the grass was green, and the actors' clothes were as colorful as they would be in real life. It made everything feel more personal, more connected. The contrast between the black and white days and this new reality was sharp. What was once a flat, lifeless world now felt rich and full. But it wasn't just the shows that changed. The family's experience of television itself felt different. The TV became more than just something to watch. It was now something to experience. The vibrancy of color drew people in deeper, making it harder to walk away mid-show. It wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was a sensory experience, one that demanded attention and offered immersion. Everyone gathered around, eyes wide, as the colors popped off the screen. Children would often find themselves enchanted by the cartoons that suddenly seemed to leap to life in full color, and even the adults, who had perhaps seen it all before, couldn't help but be captivated by the newness of it all. The moment the color TV arrived in the home, it became a focal point. The room seemed to center itself around the glowing screen. It wasn't just the stories being told that brought people together. It was the magic of the colors, the way they drew everyone in. The TV became more of a centerpiece, and not just for viewing shows, but for family conversations. The color set a new standard for what was possible. No longer did families simply sit back and passively watch. The vivid colors brought a new level of excitement, even if the shows themselves hadn't changed much. Yet, there was something else that made the arrival of the color television so significant. It was a sign of progress. It was a physical marker of change, of moving forward into a new, modern era. It wasn't just about the colors on the screen. It was about the sense that the world was shifting, that something was being left behind, and something new was being embraced. The colored TV represented a new kind of family entertainment, one that was part of the cultural fabric, and it felt like the family was growing alongside it. In retrospect, it seems odd to think about how much of an event this was, the arrival of a color television. But at the time, it was a symbol of modernity, of connection to something larger, And every evening spent in front of that colorful screen, every moment spent watching as the world came alive in front of them, became a part of the family's memory. The colors may have faded over time, but the feeling they created remains bright in the minds of those who were there to witness it. Saturday mornings held a certain magic, a quiet kind of excitement that filled the air even before the day had fully begun. The house seemed to breathe a little easier as the hustle of the work week gave way to slower, more deliberate rhythms. There was no rush to get out the door or pack in a long list of to-dos. Instead, the weekend opened with the soft sounds of the TV crackling to life, the first signs of daylight peeking through the curtains. The weekends were for family time, and for many homes, that meant one thing: cartoons. The ritual was almost universal. Kids tumbled out of bed, still groggy from sleep, and hurried to the living room, where they could settle into their favorite spot on the couch or the floor. The TV, warm from being on all night as a silent companion, was now the center of attention. The morning shows, often filled with bright animation, catchy songs, and characters that felt like old friends, would begin. The screen was alive with color, and everything seemed fresh, vibrant in a way that made the morning feel less like the beginning of a day and more like a special event. The room was usually quiet, except for the occasional giggle or exclamation from a young child watching their favorite cartoon character. The world outside felt far away, safe, distant, and unhurried. But it wasn't just the kids who enjoyed this time. Parents, though perhaps less excited about the cartoons, would often sit nearby, sipping coffee or reading the newspaper, their eyes occasionally drifting to the screen. Even if they weren't watching every moment, there was a kind of peaceful togetherness that lingered in the room. The TV wasn't just a form of entertainment, it was the foundation of a shared experience. It was something to look forward to, something to gather around as a family. The gentle rhythm of the morning unfolded in the quiet hum of the TV, with the kids' laughter and the parents' occasional comment threading everything together. The weekends also held room for other favorite shows, family programs, sports games, or news programs that became part of the ritual. Whether it was a Saturday afternoon game on TV or a family-friendly variety show, the weekend television programs created an anchor point for families. The rhythms were set by the schedule of the programs. Around the time the evening programs rolled in, families were once again pulled to the living room, making space for a collective viewing experience, often with bowls of popcorn or some homemade treat in hand. The TV wasn't just something on in the background, it was part of the shared connection, a symbol of time spent together. The shows may have changed over the years, but the comfort of that time, those slow Saturday mornings and relaxed evenings, remained unchanged. It's easy to forget, but there was something special about those moments. It wasn't just the cartoons or the games or the movies. It was the fact that the family, for a few hours at least, was united by something simple, by something that didn't demand too much or ask for attention beyond being present. The TV served as the perfect anchor to a slow morning and a comfortable evening, where everyone could gather and simply be. These family gatherings were more than just watching something together. They were about creating a space where time could slow down, where the day's worries could be put aside, and where memories were quietly made. It wasn't a noisy event, but a gentle one, a ritual that carried on year after year, whether the shows stayed the same or not. The warmth of that time lingered, even as the years passed by. Television had always been more than just a pastime. It became a cultural thread that tied families together, shaping conversations and even influencing behaviors. The shows that aired on the television were often more than just entertainment. They were events, social touchstones that families could share and discuss, helping shape a shared cultural language. The lines between fiction and reality blurred as the characters on screen became familiar faces, offering a sense of comfort, like old friends who were always there, ready to provide laughter or lessons. These shows, in a sense, helped define the era, becoming the backdrop for so many lives. The influence of TV shows wasn't just confined to the screen, it spilled over into everyday life. Conversations at the dinner table or during family gatherings often centered around the latest episode of a favorite show. Everyone seemed to have a favorite character, a particular line of dialogue that stuck with them, or a plot twist that had made them laugh or cry. It wasn't just a passive experience, it sparked discussion. If someone had missed the show, the others would eagerly fill them in, recounting every detail as if it were something they had all shared. It was more than just a way to pass the time, it was a way to stay connected, to participate in a broader conversation that was unfolding in homes across the country. For children, TV shows often became the gateway to learning about the world outside their own home. The characters and settings painted a picture of places they had never been, introducing them to different cultures, lifestyles, and ways of thinking. A simple cartoon could teach a lesson about friendship, or a sitcom could subtly show the dynamics of family life, influencing how kids perceived the world. In a way, TV had a way of shaping values and perceptions, guiding families and communities through unspoken lessons. From the lessons of kindness and sharing in children's programming, to the family dynamics and social norms portrayed in primetime sitcoms, these shows shaped how people viewed the world and their place in it. The influence extended beyond the conversations in the home. As shows gained popularity, they began to influence broader social trends. Catchphrases from sitcoms were repeated in everyday conversations, creating a shared cultural vocabulary. "How you doing?" from Friends, or "That's what she said" from The Office, were just two examples of phrases that crossed from the screen into everyday speech. Fashion trends also followed the lead of popular TV characters. Who could forget the influence of I Love Lucy's vibrant outfits, or the flannel shirts made famous by Friends' Ross Geller? TV wasn't just something people watched, it became a reflection of the time, a mirror that reflected cultural shifts and personal identities. Even more subtly, television began to shape how people interacted with one another. The shows people watched became a reference point for their social interactions. It wasn't just about what you were watching, it was about what everyone else was watching. It became a way to bond, a common ground that tied people together. TV shows became a way of connecting with others, whether you were discussing the latest episode with a neighbor, quoting a favorite line with friends, or simply nodding in agreement with someone over the shared understanding of a storyline. As these shows continued to shape popular culture, they also began to create a kind of familiarity that made families feel like they weren't alone. When the family sat down to watch a show together, it wasn't just about what was happening on the screen. It was about the larger connection to the culture, the sense that you were part of something bigger. Whether it was the shared laughter over a silly comedy or the emotional connection to a drama, the television provided a space where families could relate not just to each other, but to the world outside. It wasn't just a source of entertainment, it was the cultural glue that brought people together. As television took a larger and larger role in the family routine, something else began to change. The evenings, once filled with the sounds of children playing outside, riding bikes, running through the streets, or gathering at the local park, began to quiet. The draw of the television, with its endless programming and the comfort of a shared, predictable routine, began to replace those outdoor activities. It wasn't a sudden shift, but over time, families noticed that the time spent outdoors started to fade. The lure of the TV was stronger, offering both entertainment and a new kind of companionship in the form of colorful characters, thrilling storylines, and shared family moments. The evening had once belonged to the outdoors. Dusk was a time when the world felt alive with activity. Kids would race home from school or from their friends' houses, gathering in groups to play until the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a time when the streets echoed with laughter, the sounds of skates on sidewalks, or the thud of a ball bouncing on the pavement. But slowly, the bright screen of the television began to pull them in, its glow promising comfort, excitement, and a world full of stories. The outside world, with its trees, grass, and open spaces, started to feel less inviting. The television provided an easier, more immediate escape, a world that unfolded right in front of you without ever requiring you to leave the safety of your home. The pull of the screen wasn't just about entertainment, it became about connection. The shows families watched weren't just for solitary viewing, they were for bonding, for sharing moments together in front of the glowing screen. But with each new show that entered the lineup, with each new series that captured the family's attention, there was less and less time for the outdoor play that had once been the centerpiece of childhood evenings. There was comfort in staying inside, where the television could offer a backdrop for family togetherness. When everyone was gathered together, it was easier to stay inside, to settle down on the couch rather than head out into the cold night or take a walk down the street. The TV, in a way, became an emotional anchor, making it harder to leave its warm embrace. For parents, it was a mixed feeling. On one hand, the TV offered a way for families to spend time together, a way to unwind after a busy day. On the other hand, there was the subtle sense that something was being lost, something that couldn't be replaced by even the most engaging television show. The children were no longer outside, running free in the fresh air. They were indoors, eyes fixed on the screen, drawn into a world that, for all its magic, was far removed from the tangible, physical world they once inhabited. And yet, it wasn't a feeling of guilt or regret that settled in, but more of a quiet recognition. Something had shifted. The TV had brought the family together in new ways, offering a shared experience that had its own kind of value, but at the same time, it had quietly nudged out the more spontaneous moments of outdoor play. The streets that had once been filled with the sounds of children's voices were now quieter, the rhythm of play replaced by the gentle hum of the TV. The joy of running barefoot through the grass, the freedom of playing until the sun set, those moments had faded into the background, replaced by the light of the television. The change wasn't immediate or dramatic, but rather it was gradual. Over the years, the outdoor activities became less frequent, the time spent running and playing outside, shrinking in favor of the comfort and familiarity of television. It was as if the world had shifted, not just in the technology families used, but in how they chose to spend their time. The pull of the TV was undeniable, and though the memories of those outdoor moments still lingered, they now felt like something from another era. The quiet of the evening, once marked by the sounds of laughter echoing outside, was now punctuated by the sounds of the TV filling the room, and in its glow, the family was together, but in a way that felt quieter, more contained. When we look back on those days, it's hard not to feel a sense of longing for the simplicity of it all, the gentle rhythms of family life, the unhurried pace of the evening, and the way the television, in its quiet power, brought everyone together. Maybe it wasn't just the shows that held the memories, but the feeling of togetherness they created. The TV wasn't just a device that played programs. It was a thread that wove the family's evenings together, creating a sense of shared space, a sense of shared time. It was the soft glow in the corner of the room that made everything feel familiar, made everything feel like home. Yet, there's also a quiet reflection about how things have changed. The television, once the anchor of the evening, is no longer the centerpiece of family life. The world has moved on, and with it, the way we spend our time. We still sit together, but now we're often scattered across different screens, phones, laptops, tablets, creating a new kind of connection, but one that feels less cohesive, less centered. And while television still holds a place in our homes, the ritual of gathering around it as a family, the shared anticipation for the evening show, feels like something from another time. Perhaps that's what makes it all so nostalgic. Those quiet evenings when the world outside felt distant, when the family was together, and the television was both a companion and a gateway to something larger. We didn't just watch shows, we shared experiences. We laughed at the same jokes, followed the same stories, and talked about the same moments. It wasn't just the content of the shows that made them memorable, it was the quiet comfort of the shared time they created. Maybe That's why it still stays with us, this memory of evenings spent in front of the TV. Because, in the end, it wasn't just about what we watched, but about the sense of connection it gave us, the way it brought the family together and marked the end of another day. In a world that's become more fast-paced, more fragmented, there's something undeniably special about those slower, simpler moments. And perhaps that's what we were really remembering all along, the comfort of being together, of sharing time, of watching the world unfold from the warmth of our living rooms.